Welcome to This Podcast is Making Me Thirsty, the number one destination for Seinfeld fans. This is Two Up and Two Down. Here's our producer, Chris, to start us off.
All right. And today, for Two Up and Two Down, we're doing it the finale, the final episode of Seinfeld. And Chris, start us off. What's your first up?
The finale, one of the most talked about episodes in the history of television, quite frankly. Larry David returns. 76 and a quarter million people watched this. Believe it or not. And they turned it off right after. Only 28 million watched ER. Crazy. And had no competition that night. I mean, CBS was running a repeat of Diagnosis Murder, for crying out loud. So here we go. You guys know the deal. Two positives, two negatives. This was essentially a two-part show. A little over an hour there, if you will. So here we go. May 14th, 98. You know what? I'm gonna go with Newman when he came in. He was asking about. Heard you guys are going to Paris, and his little soliloquy there about he has a cousin in Paris who she can only communicate by blinking. I don't remember that, but really funny stuff. And then obviously Jerry blows him off, and then he goes into his speech. Obviously, your day of reckoning is coming, Seinfeld, and really enjoyed it. I thought Newman brought it in this episode, especially in that first half of the episode, if you will, which was a little slow moving. So really enjoyed Newman. Cousin who only communicates by blinking. I don't know. That line got me. So our buddy Newman Wayne Knight first thumbs up.
All right. Yeah. Thank you, Chris. All right. Newman. Absolutely. So, Tony, over to you. What do you got for your first up?
Interesting. I didn't have Newman as an up. I know they needed to use Newman, and I get it. I thought that speech was pandering a bit, but I think this whole episode is a little bit of pandering. But I see where I was going with it. I'm not going to knock it too much, but I wouldn't put it as far as an up, and I don't think it's a down either. So I guess it's where it is. And I agree with O'Hara on the first half. The second half is way better than the first. We're talking about a long episode like this. So I can see that as well. Listen, my first up is you could tell Larry David's back, right? This is a throwback scene. George being George, when they meet Crespi and Page again, where we call him Kevin Page and Crespi playing Ludwig, a little nod to Ludwig. He always liked the show. He's a champion of the show. I love, George is coming right in. What do you have in the fruit department? Pineapple. That's a scary, it's like a weapon. Jerry under his breath, don't spell it, because it spells out the name for Kimbrough. They don't use, no one goes to the water cooler anymore. They use bottles. Should be called coffee machine. I mean, just perfect George. This is George. Larry David's back, right in George as George should be. And then culminating with them leaving, almost hugging, but not hugging, a nice nod to the show of never hugging. Love that scene. It's a throwback, need some water here when they first go with the first pitch episode. I do think that scene delivers. Front of the show in that scene, Kevin Page, obviously playing Ludwig. But everything, that's just good George, good Jerry, the two of them again, doing their thing in the room, or like the show all together. And then George, let's get them together, the whole thing there. Love Kimbrough, another Seinfeld Sopranos crossover there. Great scene. That's my first up.
Yeah, a great scene, like you said. So yeah, deserving of an up. All right, Chris, over to you. What's your second up?
Man, this is why I love this show, because I had that as a down. Hated that scene.
I hated Newman's speech.
There you go. I mean, pineapple? Well, they should call it a coffee machine? Man. All right. Now, here's what I will say. I do agree. I felt Larry David was back. And I will use a George for an up. It's a small thing, but it brought me back to, I believe it was the letter. So George on the private jet, how disappointed he was. This is it? Like, he expected so much more, similar to like he wanted front row at the Yankee game and he had second row. Like, that's George. Like, this is a private jet, this piece of jet. So just him going on about how he was disappointed in the private jet. It's a small up, but I felt that was Larry David really infusing the old George back into things. So Yeah, I tell you, I had the down on the other one. So I think that's who knows where. Like I said, this is the beauty of this show. We have the same different ups as downs, and we could end up with the same grade. That's the beauty of the show, especially the finale. Very polarizing. But I think my partner here is kind of looking for things. Like he didn't want that Newman speech. I thought it was just a lovable speech. You know, kind of culminating. They had to put a finishing touch on Newman. I think they did a decent job of that. And then they pushed him out. And boom, let's go. Let's start the show. So uh where am I? That's my second up. Second up. George complaining about the jet.
Well, yeah, there you go. You could both seesaw back and forth about your ups and your downs, but you can level out at the same grade when it's all said and done. But yeah, this is an hour-long episode, so again, only 2 ups and 2 downs. So listen, there's going to be plenty more that we don't get to. But hey, fans, play along and give us comments of what you think is an up and a down. So Tony, having said that, back to you. What's your second up?
Yeah, listen, he's right. There's a lot here. Everyone's got their opinions this episode. I believe, though, I'm doing downs, right? Or no? Oh, I only gave one up. You're right. Okay. Yeah. So good points. Good point there. You know, the feminine line on the plane, though, that's a little bit, I don't know, feminine to sit that way. I think George would think it's a feminine, not that it's a feminine when Elaine tells him it's a feminine. But anyway, that's a whole other thing. And George used the one calling out that effeminate stuff. Did it in the car in an earlier episode. Anyway, O'Hara gave Newman the up earlier. I gotta throw this up out there. I'm sure he maybe was gonna get to it. Maybe I'm taking it from him, but I mean, let's be honest. This was a Jackie Chiles episode. We gave him the kudos when we talked to him. I mean, the entire second half, the whole courtroom scene, his opening monologue in the courtroom scene was great. You know, him with Sidra is great. You know, him kind of giving Elaine a little. I like, you know, you always look good. I mean, Jackie Chiles nails it. Hits it out of the park in this episode. And this is something I think Pink Hats and you know, those are there from the Wednesday nights kind of agree on. I would think that Chiles really, you know, held this whole episode together. He's kind of the bridge between all of that for me. You know, I thought he was great. You know, you couldn't. I think when Larry David come with his premise, it's like, oh, here we go. We put him in a court. Boom, we got Jackie Chiles just to run this thing. You know, really worked well, and I thought he hit it out of the park. So that's my second up is Jackie Chiles all the way through.
Yeah, absolutely. He definitely pulls this whole episode together, and so yeah, good mention there with Jackie Chiles. So Chris, you're down. What do you got for your first one?
Couldn't agree more on Childs. Yeah, I had it myself. And I actually wrote, it was good to see Susie. Susie, like she was there. Pretty cool. So they threw her a bone. Listen, I have more downs than ups. That doesn't mean I'm going there the grade, but there's plenty of downs. One that always bothered me, when they're at the coffee shop deciding where to go, I think that was 3 minutes. Take it back. Cut it. Like, oh, should we go to Russia? Yeah, if you're bleak, George. Like, where to go? We're deciding where to go. Like, just send it to Hawaii. Send it anywhere. Whatever. Like, and then they landed on Paris, and then obviously the Kramer jumping up and down. But like when they were meeting to discuss that, I don't know. Didn't like it. It was too much. It wasn't funny either. If you're not laughing, then why? If you're not going to get a genuine laugh, why put it in? They could have just said NBC is sending us to Paris, right, or wherever, London, Tokyo, don't matter. But for me, that just seemed like a wasted scene. And listen, Larry David was thinking about this episode forever, and then he was off for 2 years. Like, and I know it was heavily edited. You know, Skip Collector, of course. That I would have edited out. So that was my first down.
All right, yeah. Come to mention it, yeah, that scene really didn't land. So, like you said, so good point. Tony, over to you. What's your first down?
That's something we agree on, folks. I mean, 100%. I hated that scene. I wrote it down too. I don't know if I was going to use it, but it was on my list for sure, and I never liked it. It's one of those two forced. We always talk about that. You know, it wasn't funny. I agree. Switzerland. My first down though, and it sets the tone. I mean, how many people tuned into this thing? O'Hara said 70 million, something like this, right? We're all ready to go. Here we go. Finale. Let's cold open is atrocious. I mean, it's just one of those all-time bad cold opens. George literally goes, "Oh, what we say we hate about George," as we kind of mimic it. He literally uses that line. It's and it's weird because Larry David's there, but Jason Alexander is too tied to the season 8 and 9. Jason Alexander doing that kind of George, that he delivers Larry David's lines in the later season George. If he delivered those in the earlier season George, the Woody Allen, Larry David-esque, they actually probably would have been funny. But he delivers them in the I'm yelling and I'm mad and who goes to the movies? I don't what for? I seen everything is yelling, everything's over the top. Nothing is funny about it. It loses its kind of funny, like, mensch little, like that complaining Woody Allen, Larry David stuff that's supposed to be funny. It's hard to explain, but hopefully you get my gist there. I think Jason Alexander is still tied to the old season George. And even though Larry David may be giving him some lines that are more of, old school George, I don't want hope, I want to be hopeless, the whole thing. Like the way he delivered those lines, way better than how he delivers this cold open. I just didn't like the cold open at all. And I think it set a bad tone. I mean, it started off there. I think we'll get to the grades. I don't think this is, we've both been on record saying we don't hate this episode, so I'm not going to kill it too much, but I think, I would have loved to have seen something else start this thing off than that. I thought it was just kind of a run-of-the-mill bad cold open, about going to the movies and all that stuff. I want more than health. Health's not good enough anymore. If he delivers that in the same delivery that he had early seasons, it would have worked, but he doesn't. He delivers it in the yelling George. I don't want to, he's more of that ho-ho stuff, which I don't like. So all that said, that's my down.
Yeah, interesting take there. So yeah, good point of mentioning that. So Chris, back to you. What's your second down?
Now, to be fair, technically that was just the first scene. It wasn't a cold open. They actually had stand-up to start this episode, which I actually enjoyed.
Fair point. You're right. I called it a cold open.
Yeah, people are always asking to come to the office and sit down. Like, that was actually a breath of fresh air, the stand-up. But I'm with you on that first scene. It was ho-ho, everyone loves ho-ho. So, although pink hats do. I mean, that's what they think George is. So, yeah, a lot of downs here. It's funny you mentioned Jackie with Sidra. Doesn't Jackie, when they call him, he's got kids in the picture. Is he not married? But that's a whole nother thing. So, actually, I know people are going to kill me on this one, but I had a problem with the judge being called Art Vandelay. Enough already. Like, enough. We get it. We get it. Okay. How many times are we going to bring that one back? So again, I didn't mind bringing back all the characters, but like, I don't know. That was almost like kind of like a softball they were given like fans, I guess, in some capacity. I didn't need it. I think the judge was good character, tough, the whole thing, but you didn't have to make his name Art Vandelay. And I know, that was so funny. Don't you get it? That's George's name. Yeah, I get it. And that's why I have a problem with it. So, second down.
All right. Yeah. Thanks, Chris. Everybody's got their down. So there's your second one. Tony, over to you. What's your second down?
Yeah, I piggyback off that. I hated it then. I've always hated it. And I think a lot of this episode has pandering in it. And that's probably the biggest one there is. I mean, what are we doing? And my down, I'm just going to piggyback off that with my down, because not only is the Art Vandelay thing just ridiculous, but all the flashbacks I could have done without, especially watching it live. I mean, that's just pandering to those people tuning in. Oh, the final episode of Seinfeld. Let me see what's going on. It's like, my analogy of the Super Bowl. You didn't watch all season. Don't watch this game and start chiming in, right? If you're watching football all year, you know how a game should go. It's different, right? This was different. This wasn't like watching a regular season game. It was like watching the Super Bowl. So again, to O'Hara's point, I get why they did it. I just hated it. To O'Hara's point about editing, I mean, we left in these long flashbacks of showing me the scenes, showing me the scenes of the, and to top it off, I mean, I agree with bringing characters back. The whole thing was an homage, tribute to the characters, which our podcast is as well. But I don't need the soup Nazi coming in and talking. First of all, they didn't even wrong the soup Nazi. If anything, he wronged them. I mean, what are we doing here? Why is he coming back in? For everyone to see the soup Nazi, the one guy everyone knows, that's why we got to bring him in. I thought the Bubble Boy died, by the way. That's a side story, but they killed the Bubble Boy. He comes in, whatever, fine. I like the Bubble Boy. I'm okay with that. Anyway, I just thought there was too much of showing the scene that they're talking about. They bring in Mrs. Choate. We know what happened. Give me, shut up, you old bag. I don't need to see that scene again. We got clip shows for that. And I'm hearing them right now in the comments, oh, you don't really, like Howard said, you know what we're talking about? It's funny. Remind people of the flashback. I don't know. Never sat well with me live. I tuned in. I'm like, what are we doing? You're going to show me what I already know? We've been watching the show for reruns for 100 times over. We've seen it all. So the Vandalay I agree with, and then that stuff I agree with. That's my second down, huh? I'll get to the rest of my grade then. That's my second down.
Yeah, and you're kind of right. It seemed like like they kind of just cheaped out with putting in the clips, because right before that you had the Chronicles the week before, so that was a whole bunch of clips. So yeah, just having a person say it, like the scene, that's all you needed. So yeah. And actually, the Bubble Boy, he made it out of the house, all right. They got him into the ambulance.
That's fair point. Fair point.
And Elaine did ruin his business by giving everybody the free recipes of the soup Nazis.
Yeah, he had it coming.
I don't think Tony got to the end of that episode. Maybe. Here's the deal. Yeah, to your point, Schmidt, it felt clip showish. That's what I had here.
No, you're right. You're right.
So
Chris,
that's my down. Clip showish.
Yeah. So Chris, we did it all ups and downs. So give us your grades and thoughts here.
Yeah, like I said, this is a polarizing episode and an interesting one to analyze. Again, when I saw it live, I had a different grade for it than I have now. There is more of an appreciation. Although after going through these 15 minutes, Tony's got to change my mind on some stuff. So I don't know where I'm going to land here. I think Frank and Estelle were great. Estelle, the whole thing seems stupid to me. I don't know. That's like a great parent thing. Great parent thing to say. I don't know why. It's the mother, but it's kind of like reminds me of my father. Like my brothers would crush a team, and he'd always say, "Oh, the other team stunk." There's just never giving credit. That's kind of that old school mentality. I don't know. Estelle had it. The Frank Rabu line, incredible. Some of the montage stuff I could do without. Everyone packing and doing that. Like I'm not big on the montage stuff. What else here? The Geraldo stuff could have done without. Elaine had some annoying lines. You mentioned George kicking off the show. How about her kicking off the show? Like the whole Jill phone call thing, that was kind of a lame storyline. And she just goes, "How about bye-bye?" Like it kind of reminded me of Punta Cana in some way. Like, all these bad lines. And then Jerry asked her, "What were you going to say in the plane?" And, she says, "I've always loved you, United Airlines." Probably one of my least favorite lines of the whole run. I've always loved United Airlines. I mean, how stupid is that? So anyway, there's a lot of, weird things in here. Tony mentioned you felt Larry David was back, but to his point, I think George and Elaine already became different characters, and they couldn't be saved. No lifeline there. Jerry was solid. The tie with Jackie. Kramer's Kramer. Obviously, I thought Newman, the parents were good. The fat guy jokes. That whole premise. I don't Good Samaritan law. I don't know. So I don't know. I don't know where I'm ended up here. Is what I'm trying to tell you. Oh, and let's end it with. Even the ending, I didn't love, again, the homage back to the button. Some people like it, Tony May. I was just like, did we have to tie it in with that bow? Maybe. So I got a couple grades here. I gave the original pilot a C+. I thought about wrapping it up with that same grade, but I'm not gonna. I'm gonna give the finale a B minus. I thought it was solid enough. I thought there was enough there. I think they could have done it in a half hour, to be honest. I think that's was another common theme here. A little too long. I get it, 76 million. They made a ton of money off it, but I'm gonna go B minus. Like I said, I think when I watched it live, I would probably said C minus to C. So I think time has been good to the finale.
Yeah, I'll agree with you, Chris. That like the original viewing back then, back in 1998, like I kind of felt underwhelmed about the finale. But as you said, as time went by, you know, grows on you, and so, but like you said, you went from like a C plus to a B minus. That's kind of like how I felt too. But Tony, so we're going to go back to you. I also wanted to get your thoughts about how they ended it with them, George and Jerry talking about the button on the shirt again. Did you think that was a good tie-in?
I did actually. I have that written down. I liked that O'Hara's right. As much as I hated everything else, the Vandalay stuff and everything else, I thought you want to tie it back together like that. I have no problem with that. Listen, O'Hara brought up some great points. I think this episode is very hard to analyze, only because it's kind of a standalone thing. It's its own thing. It's a gigantic thing. 70 million people watching, like you said. Totally agree with him. It should have been shorter, but to his point, they're not going to make it shorter. How much money they're coming in with advertising for this episode? They're going to make it as long as possible. We get it, okay? I thought the second half was way better than the first. O'Hara made a great point about Elaine and George. They were already mailed in. There was no change in that. The cell phone walkie talk. This is one of those things I got to touch on. We talked about it with Klosterman a little bit. This is, if you want to talk about Seinfeld, it starts with the VHS tape and it ends with the cell phone. That's what I always like to say. It encompasses that entire century, end of the century for all of us. If you were around there in that time, if you're watching reruns of the show, it's like another world. It's like us watching reruns of I Love Lucy, or us watching reruns. Even in the 70s, you want to go to Brady Bunch and Three's Company. These are time capsules. Seinfeld is a time capsule. You know, that 10-year span, starting with, you know what happened in a Met game? I taped it and ending with a cell phone walk and talk. I mean, that's pretty much sums up those 10 years for all of us. So for that, I always loved it. We didn't bring it up yet. If you're thinking about it, instituting an open door urination policy, let me disabuse you of that notion right now. Always loved that line. I'm with Jerry on that one. Xena Warrior Princess. I'm surprised O'Hara didn't bring that one up. He loves that. And I think Larry David uses it later on in Curb. I agree with O'Hara. The parents delivered. Start to finish, the parents delivered. Jackie Chiles delivered. It's a really, I agree with O'Hara too, that it kind of gets life the more you watch it. I think it aged well. I think the fact that so many people didn't like it bothers me even more, because it's not a terrible episode in the grand scheme of things. I hated the plane going down and Elaine about to tell Jerry she loved him, to O'Hara's point, coming back to United. That was terrible. And again, pandering. A lot of pandering in this episode. The cereal packing I couldn't stand. That's an old, everyone knows Jerry likes cereal. Let's throw that in there for the Pink Hats, or even, this is beyond Pink Hats. This is like people that weren't even watching, let alone Pink Hats. Oh, Jerry likes cereal. I've heard that before. Oh, that's funny. He eats cereal. Terrible. All that's to say, I actually almost went as high as a B, to O'Hara's point. So it's not a terrible episode, but I think that's too high. And I hate to do this. I'm landing where he landed. I was anywhere between a B minus, even a C plus. But I think, to be fair, everything this thing represents, I think I covered everything on my list. It's an average episode when it comes down to it, and maybe a little bit above for everything it stands for. So yeah, I'm going to give the finale a B minus as well. I think I landed on the same grade.
You gave the pilot a B minus, so you did a nice little sandwich, a B minus.
Oh, I did? I don't remember what I gave the pilot. I did? Yeah, well, that makes sense. I think it's, it's one of those, it's not too bad, it's not too good. It's just, it did its job. So yeah, B minus.
Well, yeah, so there you go, folks. Let us know what you think of the finale, if it's better or worse than a B minus. We love to hear from you in the comments. And thank you guys for another episode of 2 Up and 2 Down. And we'll see everybody on our next episode.